Theo wrote of the death of his father, Carl Strello, in Journey to Horseshoe Bend in the Country of the Rain song. Then the storm. He hears the roll of distant thunder and thunderclaps above him. He hears them from two different directions. Deafening rolls of thunder, lightning overhead, iron sheets of thunder, titanic cascades of sound, and then the first heavy drops of rain without a break, the unbearable tension in the air. Then, a wild gale suddenly burst upon Horseshoe Bend in unbridled primal fury. Within minutes, the two thunderstorms seemed to have joined their separate forces, and brilliant flashes of lightning began to ride over Yorburka as well. The landscape on all sides vanished behind dense white veils of pouring rain. It was as though the whole country around Horseshoe Bend was passing again through the mythical deluge of rain, which had quenched the bushfires of Umbalpa at the beginning of time. The rain ancestors are fighting it out at the foot of the Fire Mountain. The storm was above him, thunder over one mountain, answering thunder over another. The whole air resounding the deafening noises of winds, rain and thunder, until finally after half an hour the violence faded away and only the sweet music of the quickening rain remained. The heavy drops still fell in steady showers which the thirsty land drank up greedily. The rich scent of the rain, soaked earth floated up from the cool ground, and a delicious freshness spread through the fragrant air. Death had claimed a human victim, but new life was returning to the earth with the rain. This was the Central Australia of Aboriginal belief. It was the land of Algira, the land of eternity, an Aranda land where the dead shared the land of the living and the company of their supernatural beings. To the boy, the rain that was falling on his father's grave had come to represent the symbol of life, the promise of life, the assurance of life, and the certainty of life. In this brief paper, I provide glimpses of work of the first 2 years of a 5-year partnership between the Central Australian Aboriginal Congress based in Alice Springs, a large health organisation with 5 remote satellite health services, and CASSE, as Anne explained, a small psychoanalytic non-voluntary organisation focusing on violence and underlying trauma in Aboriginal communities. The CASSE program is called the Aboriginal Australian Relations Program. The project is called Kuranamara, Make My Spirit Inside Me Good. In doing so, I attempt to show that the past has a living presence in the emotional storms of a people in traumatic collision, catastrophic change and uncharted territories. The racial divide and cultural contact is the eye of the thundering storm. I also hope to illustrate the capacity of Aboriginal people to transform the stormy ruptures to provide a living continuity in being over time and into the future. Over the 2 years, focus groups and a 2-day workshop have been held with the Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal staff of Congress, the board of leaders and leaders from other key Aboriginal organisations. Local meetings have been held at Ndaria, an ex-mission 100k from Alice Springs, and St Teresa or Lelandra. The Aboriginal Community Development Officer for CASSE Congress, Joe Carr, and board members have visited many remote communities, Wallumburu, Lelandra, Warumpi, Urumbunja, Hartsbluff, Larumba, Mbladawatch and more, in preparation for a summit cancelled on 2 occasions, one due to the rain, and holding meetings about the problem life and violence. Many steering committee meetings have been held with Aboriginal leaders from Congress, and these meetings are prefaced with talk of sorry business or violent events, and laced with discussions about problem life. 2 large public forums have been held, including a town forum of 300 people, Walk in My Shoes, in Alice Springs, working together to address violence, and a public forum on Reconciliation Australia in Melbourne. 2 booklets, Saving Lives and Changing Minds, and the What, Why, How have been published and circulated among the Aboriginal communities and organisations. We have a 3rd one in press, whose problem is in any way addressing the racial divide, which will soon be released. In the next year, there are plans to work with Inkinja, developing a model of Aboriginal men's shed in the town of Alice Springs, and to work with families of Levenjaputa and Wallumburu on living cultural change projects out in the West. I have been working with Anne Cantor. We have been supported by the CASSE COM and the Advisory Board of Aboriginal Leaders and Psychoanalysts. I have a cold. We have been privileged to be working with the Aboriginal Leaders of Congress. We have not embarked on a goal-setting or problem-focused program as such, or a searching for outcomes of cure or success. The attempt to date has been to work with the leaders, listening, presencing and empowering, traversing the zone of trauma and violence, and to suspend desire, judgment, action, solutionizing, pathologizing, directional determinations, and to emotionally experience the ruptures, shifting movements, and transformations into a settled-down country. The psychoanalytic frame. Two psychoanalytic concepts provide critical cornerstones to the thinking of this project and inform the method and approach, namely radical doubt and radical hope. I use Beyond's notion of seizure, defined as an event which simultaneously unites and separates as a mode of transformation. The seizure becomes a split when it is not tolerated. Bergstein writes that Beyond's notion of seizure is therefore a model for the gap, that raging river between two banks, where catastrophic change can occur, but where lays the danger of catastrophe as well. This, Bergstein states, is the almost impossible place beyond us to be, the emotional turbulence, without gripping onto any of the banks to hold movement, and to loosen the grip on familiar anchors until the next storm. Doubt, radical doubt, serves for the attainment for truth through emotional experiencing, which provides a sense of belonging. It is a type of thought that overcomes the antithesis between the past and present, providing a temporal third, if you like. Beyond asks us to be in the eye of the storm. Radical hope is a concept coined by Jonathan Lear that anticipates a good for which those who have the hope, but as yet lack the appropriate concepts with which to understand it, and I would add a future yet to be articulated. There is a nexus with the Aboriginal world, for like psychoanalysis, it also privileges the sacred, togetherness but separateness, reciprocity, myth, song and dreaming, fundamental relatedness, shifting spatially, ancestors, temporality, settling down country, the concept of place and the process of place-making, Kadaitra of the mind, healing non-curries, being found and growing up on country, immediacy, resilience, imagination and intimacy. The context of the work is a post-colonial world of gross inequality, poverty, suffering, violence, homicide, suicide, assaults, domestic violence. A 60,000-year-old civilization staggering into the 21st century, challenged first by colonialism and traditional dispossession, and then by modernity, and more recently again by government and army intervention. In July-August 2007, the federal government enacted the Northern Territory National Emergency Response Bill in the name of protecting children from sexual abuse, giving the federal government wide control over Aboriginal lands, families and community services, and the Indigenous Affairs Minister total control over Indigenous community governance. Intervention measures were exempted from the Racial Discrimination Act, breaching two treaties to which Australia is a signatory, the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination, and the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. The army rolled in and the past became the present as people fled in fright with their children. Alice Springs has been called and is still called the stabbing capital of Australia. The old-time Aboriginal culture indeed has been ruptured, but Aboriginal culture has nonetheless survived. Alice Springs is called the Mbantua, where according to Adam de Sacred Geography, the tracks of Iparinya, Ndalka, Ungerica, caterpillars of Iparinya beetles, and Noelia dogs, among other beings, where all their tracks crisscross, marking the country, with the signs of their campsites, their battles, their births, their deaths. The last Aboriginal people to come into civilization and give up their nomadic way of life, their walking around, were people from the Western Desert, and as late as the 1950s. The contextual discourse is pulverised by the tensions between the remedialists who wish to close the gap in the modern world and the Orientalists who wish to allow difference and cultural hegemony from the old-time world. The paradigms of evolutionary and scientific development, civilization, assimilation, modernity, adaptation, and comparison have primacy. There is raging debate about the nature of the violence, and different discourses underline either or individual pathology, structured violence, culturally anchored primitive violence, cultural erosion, alcoholism, and more. There is a corollary raging debate about the solutions and the right and necessity of public governance into private spheres. Questions such as, is Indigenous culture the problem or the solution, can be central to debate. To talk of problems can herald the stereotype of the drunk, the idle, the sit-down money, the problem people with deficits, and can obliterate or obscure the suffering, the resilience, imagination, cultural difference, fundamental relatedness, and continuity, strength, and transformations of the Aboriginal people. It can ignore the problem white man posed, as Professor Stanner in his 1968 Boyer lectures, After the Dreaming, so aptly said. There are perhaps too many theories, he said, about our troubles with Aborigines. We can spare a moment to consider their theory about their troubles with us. Two of their strongest ideals are to be one company, to join with others for a purpose, and to go level, to be one company on equal terms. Their theory is that we are unwilling to really be one company and to go level with them. He goes on to say that what we have badly misinterpreted as inertia and parasitism, what in fact were their opposites, are people's will to survive somehow, under any conditions, and an offer of a union, which until recently we have not been minded to take. His historical works remain relevant to contemporary Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal relations, and the question of their theory about their troubles with us is rarely asked. It can ignore the violence of the white man in culture contact in the colonial years. As Keating, the ex-Prime Minister of Australia, said, the white man took the land, the white man murdered, the white man bought the alcohol, and the white man stole the children. Furthermore, to not talk of the suffering can deny the suffering and the critical indicators of life and death. So this project is about the catastrophic interface between Aboriginal and Australian relations, and this project privileges a two-way process. Aboriginal people in relation to non-Aboriginal people have largely concealed their sacred world, including the importance of kin, their knowledge of song, and algira, unless required to reveal for native title purposes, and have on the surface largely acquiesced, become yes people and anti-people engaging in lateral violence. The catastrophic context is ever present and lived daily by the leaders. Kathleen Kamara Turner says, you will always have the sadness if you're a true Aboriginal person. The weeping sadness of watching the sun go down and watching the sun come up is law and is unleashed in daily sorry business. The words of MK, her daughter was murdered a few years ago, find a permanent place in my mind and stab me often. I still have that grief and tear and rip in my heart like it happened yesterday. I still have that grief for Lakanya. Likewise, I think one must never forget the poignant words of Rex Brannett, an elder from Yindamu who at the town forum in Alice Springs said, after all, you do not speak our language or know my world, but I speak yours. Congress began in the Rains with the Aboriginal people handing tents to the wet and the stranded as the Todd River raged. Rainstorms may inform the process and way forward, for the rains make the desert country grow and the water holes full. Many springs have healing properties and the water is especially important, life-saving and life-giving. Sometimes after good rains, when bush tucker becomes plentiful, Aboriginal people came together, performing ceremonies to increase plants and animals and to perform ceremonies of initiation, to re-establish relationships with kin, and to celebrate the travels of beings of Jacopa, whose tracks crisscross the land. There are thunderous storms and even dry dust storms in the desert. Then there is relieving and replenishing rain. Trauma trails make rainstorms inside us and river of tears, which swell like the Todd River in other springs when it rains. I will now tell some of the story of the pain in the eye of the storm, with some fleeting excerpts using the Aboriginal voice where possible, showing the representation, continuity, and transformation of ruptured psyches and ruptured cultural worlds, exploding from the past to the present into the future. I begin with the Aboriginal context and an Aboriginal story heralding ancestors, country, song and Algeria. This told story is one of many Aboriginal stories untold that provides a cultural backdrop and anchor to the life of the project and to the lives of Aboriginal people. We travel back in convoy to Baden's traditional country. Baden Williams is a senior lawman from Nandaria. He often wears a red headband and was employed within Kinja, the male health service with Congress, but has since returned to his country. We saw the old pipes which are being put together by Aboriginal people to bring water to Hermannsburg in the drought of the 30s, where so many people died. The country was so beautiful. It was like a park with rocky outcrops and pools of water. Nearby was a Christian cross. Two worlds side by side in contradiction and in coalescence. There was a rock and a grinding stone where the grains for damper were ground from years ago. Baden walked ahead and began to sing out to the ancestors and asked us to wait. He told us the story of the king, his great-great-great-great-grandfather, which was actually the same story I'd read the night before in the book of Strello. Later I showed him the book. He said it was okay for me to read and to know. It was a dreaming story. He read about the rock standing still in the face of the storm. This is a love song, he said. I can sing it for you. Baden sang. Among the rippling waters he sits without a move. It is Kantjira himself who is sitting without a move. Moveless like a walder he is sitting. His hair bedewed with the rain he is sitting. Shaking the earth, he is shaking the earth. Calls the voice of the thunder, the voice of the thunder. A flash of lightning shocks and terrifies. Moveless like a boulder he is sitting. His hair bedewed with the rain he is sitting. The power of the flood has been broken. It is soaking into the sand. Kantjira sits unmoved in the face of thunderous wakes, weathers the storm and survives as the storm abates. The songs also concern conflicted relations between elders and the rebellious dreamy men who attack and rehabilitate each other in the course of their journeys. At one of our meetings filled with the elders at Nandaria, a young man, Raphael, challenged the elders in an impassioned speech, saying they, the younger generation, didn't know the old ways, like how to throw a boomerang and stalk a kangaroo on foot, and that the elders needed to teach them these ways. An old man from the Ratawara family stood up and asked Baden to turn the Inkincha painting of the generations upside down, and in doing so, granted the younger generation authority. It was electrifying. Baden turned the painting upside down. In Aaron the Present, Aaron the Past, Diane Austin Bruce tells more of the story. The son of Kantjira, an ancestral being, was at the rain site at Kuparilia and travelled north. Finding his son gone, Kantjira took a strand from his hair, which was tightly bound hair because if it tumbled down, rain would pour and flood the land. The plucking of a single hair unleashed a powerful flash of lightning not far from Kuparilia that killed the father's son. Maggots devoured and rotted the body. Kantjira was sorry. A thunderbolt exploded beside his son and thunderclapped as the father sent the rain clouds. Flood water reaching the rotting corpse and flowed under the son's back, recomposing his body and restoring life. The son returned to his father, though they were both very tired, and went in for the final time to a secret cave near the Kuparilia site. This story is about unexpected catastrophe, repair and restoration. Strello notes that the verses that recount the restoration of the sun were sung as part of the rain song of Kuparilia. These myths of Kantjira share a central feature, restoration and integration, and are part of the known songs today, and celebrated in the annual Kuparilia Day full of ceremony, family, and festivity bringing the old into the new. The stories are also about fathers and sons, and the male role for Aboriginal people has been compromised in the cultural change inherent in colonialism. Baden proudly shared his live cultural knowledge of the sacred, singing the past into the present on country, demonstrating connection, belonging, poetry, potency, and cultural change and continuity. And I'll now just play a few of Baden's just released a contemporary version of Kupariya, and this is his new song.